Okay, no worries. So my name's Jefferson. I was a Fung scholar from Oxford in 2018. Why I came here to moderate the talk is a lot of my work in the past. I looked into the use of AI in drug discovery, specifically generative GANs, basically. So yeah. But before then, yeah, I want to invite Dr. Victor Fung to comment a bit more on this presentation. I guess take it a bit more downstream on its implications where we are in Hong Kong, in, I guess, broadly in China, and perhaps more in the Fung Group business. So.
Well, I think I have. Well, first of all, I'd like to also extend my very warm welcome to the Fung scholars and Nancy, Harry. Thank you very much for really being our partner in this conference. I mean, it's a great pleasure and honor. Now, talking about the presentation by Harry, I feel like a freshman in university. I was unfortunately brought up in the technology in the prehistoric age. So this is like, my God, So I'm really now learning and sort of like a kid in a candy shop, and really thinking about the whole thing. I was going to say a few words about how this could be more relevant to the local scene in Hong Kong, the Greater Bay Area. I think I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to ask Harry a few questions, which really was inspired by your presentation. And this is completely impromptu. One thing that really struck me was, what is the role of the human being as you progress along this technology chain? I'm saying, God, my God, we used to have a pretty big role, and then the next stage, has it really all, disappeared? And the other thing is, of course, the question that people always ask is, really the impact of technology on society, like the future of work,
Sure.
employment, and so on. I'm going there. I'm thinking of the individual human being. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm comforted by one thing that I've always seek comfort. I'm a graduate of MIT, and I keep in touch with my alma mater. I go back periodically, and I keep on getting assurances. Don't worry, Victor. The artificial intelligence will always beat the human being, like what you said in the chess and or that deep blue, etc. But the man-machine system is always on top of the whole hierarchy. And almost every other year, I go back and seek some assurance from my former professors. Oh, is that still true? Is the man-machine system still at the top of the hierarchy and not the machine? Okay. And I begin very worried, Harry, when you tell me that the machines are beginning to rewrite their own code. You don't need human beings to write the machine code. So I'm really thinking hard about, what is the role of the human being as this science progresses? Now, I'm a technologist at heart, so I'm not going to ever say that let's stop the progress of science, right? I don't want to be one of these Luddites. However, I need to ask the question, how do we as a human race keep ahead of the machine? And that's our problem. It's not, don't stop the progress because we can't progress ourselves. We got to progress faster.
Yeah.
So I came up with one thought, and I'd like to just really ask you a very specific question. It used to be when you talk about creativity, you're basically generating options. You're breaking the barriers, right? The frontiers. Scientific discovery. If I want to write a good article, a good speech, I'm doing something that's breaking the boundaries. I'm seeing this machine now, open AI and so on. If I want to write a good speech to the audience today, in 3 minutes, I'm going to generate 50 speeches. The question is, I would say, how do you find a good speech from a not so good speech? Which brings me to the question of selection. And I think a more general thing I can use is the issue of curation, because that's a multi-dimensional selection. Mm-hmm. So is the human being's space is in the curation area, where I can use chat to generate 100 options.
Yeah.
And then now, is this option better than, DALI?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I generate 100 DALIs. Now, which is the better one?
Yeah.
Is that where the human endeavor is going to be in the future? And can the machines overtake us in that curation process?
That's a very interesting observation, Victor. But you may be disappointed with my answer.
No. You're going to tell me something I can't speak to. Yeah.
We always thought that humans are special. We are special. But the fact is that we have not existed in the universe for that long either. So I would say even the human history will be transient in the history of the universe. So we don't know when we will disappear. Hopefully not too soon. So, but your point is that should we move up instead of just the raw data generation stage? Should we move up to the more curation stage? I think absolutely it's true. And we always thought that if we're at the top of the food chain, everything else can be sacrificed. So, but it's just to some degree. So what is the curation? At what level is curation? I think we will be surprised by how fast this waterline moves up, continues to really move up.
The machine's ability to
curate better and better things. And I do agree with what you said, the MIT view of saying the human machine together will be better than human alone or machine alone. That part I completely subscribe. And the interesting thing is that what's really happened in the last 10 years, especially last few years, is the impact to the human society in terms of the white-collar jobs, not as the blue-collar jobs that we worried before with the robots, that all of a sudden the office workers, paralegals, those kind of the jobs actually, ChatGPT type of system can quickly
get to the impact on society.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess is a wider question, like philosophically, is there something truly special to the human mind, the human ingenuity that, cannot be replaced by AI? I think, a quote I picked up from your presentation, Professor Shum, was everyone can be a Da Vinci, So in your opinion, what still remains, apart from, let's say, curation?
Yeah. Well, I would say I always believed that the humans are very special because of our reasoning capability. But even that, ChatGPT is showing certain level of reasoning that shocked the world. The reason towards the end of my presentation, I showed you Gary Marcus's book. Still, a bunch of people strongly believe that this line of work of ChatGPT, data-driven training bigger and bigger models will not get us to general human-level intelligence, which is kind of Jefferson asked that, what's really special about the human-level intelligence? My answer is that starts with our ability to reason, our ability to make decisions, the ability to make decisions with the consideration of consequences. That's also why now people are so worried about AI will get out of control. That's why we should have ethics, regulations, governance model. In fact, President Yi and I, we're together with Tsinghua University, we're organizing an AI governance conference, big conference in December to get into those tough issues.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess following on this front, and perhaps Dr. Fung, you can comment as well. I saw a report that just came out. BCG did a big survey on executives and what is preventing them from using Gen AI more in their business decisions. And a lot of them cite a lot of the issues you pointed out. So imperfect data, lack of reproducibility, black box mechanism. So, I guess in the Fung Group's case, in business decisions, do you think there are certain aspects that prevent, bring hesitation forward? And to your point, Professor Shum, what exactly should be the steps in regulating, AI? I guess probably from different actors, such that businesses or for the user, the negative consequences can be more mitigated.
Well, I think to be realistic, I like to say it's a lot of very esoteric reasons. I think the first is I think there's still an education gap. There's a knowledge gap. You guys know exactly what all this is, but I bet you, I would dare say, including myself, I think we have a big gap between what we understand as a technology, what the technology really is. And I think we need to close that gap first. So I think there is an opportunity for universities and so on to think about filling that gap. I think that would be my first step, to be realistic. We talk about it, we like to sound intelligent, but I must say, I don't really understand a lot of this stuff, and we pretend we understand. We nod knowingly, but
Guilty.
Yeah. I think so. And then once you understand that, then I think there are all sorts of issues. I mean, the issue on employment. You have a certain obligation to society and to the people that have worked for you for decades to keep the employment going. And sometimes you would choose suboptimal decisions, supposedly from a scientific standpoint, but I think it's an overall optimization. So I think even in the business world, if you look at the new trends in the stock market and so on, there's a lot of talk about not just maximizing shareholder value now. It used to be, the agency theory, used to be saying, okay, the CEO's, your only job is to maximize value. I think people are now beginning to question and reject that. You're actually optimizing for society a multi-attributed utility function, basically, many dimensions, and you're not doing it for just one sector. So I think, I think the science is way ahead of application from that standpoint. But having said that, I think I like to turn this around to also a question for you. There's a lot of talk, and I'm asking for the audience and as a layman, that with the advent of all this ChatGPT, that the white, especially the lower end of the white collar class, is in real danger of extinction. That and there will be a massive issue of employment if we actually have a big application of this ChatGPT. Do you think that's really true? And what do you think this the extent of the issue for employment, and how rapid is it going to be on us?
Well, I get back to this question. I just want to have a comment about what is the company there for, going from just the maximize shareholders' value. Because at Microsoft, we debate over a long period of time, and in the end, we unanimously among the leadership team agreed that we are now at the stage that the companies exist not just for optimizing shareholder value alone. For a long, long time, that was it. Why did you have a company? You optimize for shareholder value. So now, companies like Microsoft actually, of course, Fung Group as well, emphasize the importance of social impact. You exist because you want to do good for the society. So I think I absolutely agree with Victor. Then to your question about the impact on different kind of jobs and low and white collar jobs, we see examples after examples of that. I give you one particular example in the creative industry. So in a gaming company, for instance, we actually have a lot of colleagues basically coming up with creative ideas about a scene, a character. They used to have a lot of people. And many small gaming studios, as I know, even including Tencent and NetEase, big ones in China, indeed, they actually reduce the number of those lower-level creative people. In China, it was a 创意组人. So it's actually happening there. Now, I have not really seen how many paralegals losing their jobs because I'm not familiar with that market. I think, but the reason for that is indeed I can see that. Because a system like ChatGPT, they can do a lot of chores. That's just there. And with GPT-5, on the horizon, this capability, which is just getting better and better. So I think that's the thing. Having said that, with this kind of capability, the people always also dreaming that, can I have an AI as my personal assistant? Something that Bill Gates and I, we worked for many years. We actually believed in that. Now this startup Inflection.ai and Reid Hoffman and Mustafa, they actually they kind of going toward that direction. I just want to tell you that the human experience and the human interaction is still, at this point, is still just amazingly important and critical. We did a study a long time ago about training personal executive assistant. So it turns out we interviewed 50 top executive assistants in Microsoft, like Bill's assistant, my assistant, and the conclusion is that to have an executive assistant that you actually feel comfortable, productive, it takes 2 years to train. It takes 2 years to train a human assistant. So it's very interesting that it seems like that what we're doing with AI today is we're just taking a lot of human experience data and try to put that into AI. Hopefully can get to 80%, 90% as good as humans. So that's the direction that we're going. So
I like to reinforce that by just kind of taking what you say and just reframing it in the way I look at it is there's something about human interaction.
Yes.
Either one-on-one or one-to-many. And what, William, you said about, you can't do everything on the Zoom. It's the pressing the flesh, they say. And there's something happening there. Is it indirect communication, body language, something that the machine has not deciphered yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, well, that's the question I want to ask you, actually. Yeah. How long is yet? Because there's something that the machine is still lacking.
Yeah.
And they cannot, shall we say, mechanize.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't even make it explicit. But you all know what I'm talking about. When you have a group of people getting together, interacting, there's a chemistry. There's something happens. I can't tell you what it is. Waves? I don't know. Chi? I don't know what. So
yeah.
Is the machine working in this direction? And how far is the yet to come? I mean,
well,
yeah.
I actually feel I know exactly what you're asking. I just cannot exactly answer there. Yeah. But to me, I having worked as a computer scientist for so long, and I used to tell my students that we should not even study any problem if we cannot mathematically represent it. But later on, I changed my mind. Most of those things we cannot mathematically describe. And like in a lot of product building process, it's not like everything is mathematically. That's why you have user interface. You use the interface to hide the fact that you cannot be mathematically clear. Then you leave that part to human. What is the interface? Interface is basically saying, well, you tell me. I mean, standard interface in GUI is like pull down menu. You say, oh, your choice is 1, 2, 3, 4. What kind of ID you have? The Hong Kong ID, China ID, and the US passport. So you leave that instead of just completely solve this problem. I think we are just kind of moving towards the direction that the natural language now is becoming this thing. As long as you say something, now only some parts of human being, some can do it, but AIs will gradually get there.
Here, I don't know really, I know very little about the science. I think here's where the cameras and the pervasiveness of cameras and character recognition and motion, is going to really close that gap. I think what the machine was lacking was the picture.
Yeah.
Was the, what is now captured on camera and everything.
Yeah. Just so you know.
And to be able to decipher the body language, et cetera.
But just so you understand that, what a GPT-5 is doing, all of us now working on language model, large language model, exactly working on this thing called a multimodal interface. is pictures are coming in, videos are coming in. And there is even a bigger loop, big feedback loop, data collecting loop is once you equip this capability to an object called a robot moving around, then you start to collect this kind of data more than before.
It's getting more and more scary.
More and more scary.
I see. Multimodal data.
Yeah, multimodal, yeah.
So I guess this question might be on a lot of our minds. So a lot of us are students or we're earlier on in our career. You know, we come up with ChatGPT and turns out, you know, actually, why did we even study? You know, they could just do our test for us, right? So, you know, I think there's amongst the peer group that's like, you know, our education, has that equipped us enough to be, you know, graduating into the era of GPT, you know? And if not, what steps can we take to make sure that, you know, we can still contribute, or our very basic human characteristics can still flourish, you know, in light of GPT?
Well, you're really asking a question is whether with the advent of technology, the whole education process is a discontinuous process or a continuous process. I think that the fundamental, you know, deduction and that sort of process is what you're really learning. Like you were really emphasizing, the idea of remembering knowledge is just totally a non-starter, obsolete. I think students used to memorize the whole dictionary.
Yeah.
That's totally useless now. Yeah. And then it really calls into question, what are you really doing in a university, in a classroom? Are you transmitting knowledge? That is not useful at all, right? It's,
less useful.
Yeah, so what are you really transmitting when you get a student in a classroom? So maybe we have to ask the chairman of the university.
Or a president here. So
yeah, right, you got to ask the president.
Well, I think that we often say, why did you go to school, right? There are really two reasons you go to school. One is you learn how to learn, not necessarily a particular subject. Two, you actually learn to make friends at school. Oh, that's it. That's right. In my case, I actually found my wife in school, so that's very important. So, really, I see the learning part. Well, even the kind of with other students, it's extremely important part of your learning, right? Why did you go to Oxford? Why did Victor go to MIT? Those great places you meet with great people, learn from each other. So. GPT is just a tool. I think we should not be overwhelmed at this point that there will be more different tools coming out and coming up. My point, my number one observation is that when you see this kind of tools and embrace it or embrace them, that's important, and so that you are not going to be in a disadvantageous place.
Yeah. How do we embrace that?
Yeah. Or first of all, you should use GPT, start to use GPT. So that's why, as President Yi said, that we immediately opened it up to Hong Kong UST staff, faculty, students, and takes a little bit of money, probably worth it. The other thing, of course, if you have a chance to build your own, you were asking Victor that, for example, what should the Fung Group do? I would say, it's probably at some point worthwhile to experiment with Fung Group's data and maybe not building the foundational model, maybe build a fine-tuned model to see this thing is useful for your internal productivity and the external sales marketing. All these kind of things are possible. Only if you use, can you know how effective it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
May I take advantage of this to ask Professor a question really about the future? But let me build it up by just continuing what you were just saying, Harry. I think every era of technology brings on its own way of working, own business models. Now, I think progress can be made with innovations in business models, by the way, not only dependent on technology, but when a new technology wave comes, definitely you need a new set of business models. Our company was founded in 1906 by my grandfather. It was back in the Qing dynasty. And most of the communication was written by letters that would take 3 months So, I always tell my friends and our staff, I bet he was absolutely shocked by the advent of the telegram.
Absolutely.
Because you mean instantaneously, you have to actually answer. It used to take 3 months. Now then you get the internet age, that took another, and now we're in the ChatGPT age. So the current issue is, with the advent of this new disruptive technology, what's going to happen to the way you work and the business models that you have to deal with and the way and the type of talent that you need to. It is almost like a rethink.
Yes.
And in fact, that's why I use the word disruptive, because I think to try and morph what you're doing in the last era of technology to the present one, you may be, frankly, doing it too slowly. But then the biggest issue, which we touch on, is the human issue. All your staff, 20,000 of them around the world, were trained in this technology. And how do you get them to the new one? And really, the real issue is how many can adapt? I mean, that's a very realistic human problem. So the question I want to ask you, though, is we're in the ChatGPT era. Can we take advantage of your, real understanding of the direction? When are we going to get another wave of technology? And kind of what do you think it would look like? And when do you think it will come? I'm just concerned that the waves are going to cascade more and more rapidly. We between the telegraph and the fax, actually, it was like 50 years.
Yes.
Between the fax and the internet, it was probably 15 years. I don't know, it's telescoping. So now between the ChatGPT, which we're dealing with now, what is the next stage and how fast is it going to come?
It's really, it's always hard to predict something. For example, I worked on quantum computing for a while, and it's really hard to predict when the quantum computer is really going to happen. But along this line of AI, I give you one good scenario, I give you one bad or scary scenario. I think the good scenario I can kind of imagine it's going to happen probably fairly quickly. It's kind of home robots taking care of elderly. I think that's not too far away. I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest opportunities commercially. We can do that, especially in this part of the world, in the Great Bay Area. I think the opportunities out there. The other thing I predict that is going to happen, but it's going to take some time, is the brain-computer interface.
What, sorry?
Brain
computing
interface. Part of the reason, just so people are scared of AI, is that the overall the human history, we create tools after tools after tools until information age. It's all about creating tools to amplify our physical capability. Physical capability, you have machines, you move faster, it's a physical capability. But from the information age, especially now with AI age, we are scared. We're getting scared because it's amplify our mental capability. I emphasize the reasoning capability. It's something so human, so unique. Oh my God, we are not running as fast as wolves. We never worried about too much, and so that's okay. But the mental, and then we also don't understand enough about the brains. I think it's just that we just don't understand it. We just don't do enough experiment. We cannot just cut off and counting on those neurons. But that might change. This whole thing might change. And there are already companies that can kind of implant enough electrodes into your brain. And right now, most of the things is actually one directional, meaning that human brain signal actually driving something external. The opposite is truly scary. The opposite is that actually you can instruct the human brains to do things.
Wow.
And that.
You're going to give me more nightmares.
So I just leave you this scary scenario that we still don't know much yet.
Yeah. I have so many more burning questions to ask, but I understand we're running out of time. but yes, exactly. So I would love to open the floor up to other phone scholars. Please feel free. There's 2 mics here. If you have any questions, yeah, say your name and the university you're from. So I guess, yeah, you in the back there. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Ellie Boltina. I'm from MIT. First, thank you so much for your presentation and your insightful discussion so far. So what I was wondering about is you touched on this a little bit with one slide on social impact, but what do you think is the best way to address misinformation that can be propagated by AI? Because like you said, they're just made to predict the probable next token. So there's actually nothing that ensures that it will be correct. And now with many websites being generated by AI, then these are like the first search results that comes up, and it creates this loop where false information is being verified, even to the extent of creating fake scientific citations, which can be an even bigger issue if it's used legitimately to summarize research papers and it comes up with things that don't exist. So how would you go about addressing this in an ideal world?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And it's a very difficult question that many of us, of course, have been thinking about this, for a long, long time. I quickly answered this question probably at the 3 different levels. So when I was at Microsoft, I, together with my colleague Brad Smith, who is the chief legal officer and the president, we created this committee called the Ether Committee, the Microsoft AI Ethics Committee. We anticipate that there will be questions, problems like you raised, and as a big company like Microsoft, we do have this kind of responsibility. But I started with the level that I think we just the practitioner level. I think those companies, big or small, need to create the tools to help the practitioners to understand the system they have created and what they can really do. So the last presentation I had at Microsoft was called Engineering Responsible AI, where I showed some examples that what we have created in Microsoft, like the deep learning system. You need to understand where things go wrong, and you go step by step, kind of try to be, as much as possible, to be explainable where things actually go wrong. My favorite example is actually if you just use the data from the internet, you train a natural language model, it's just going to be biased against, for example, woman. You say, oh, man and a woman, boy and a girl, then you say doctor, then you say nurse, and then you have a bias there, all this kind of. So that's practitioner level. Then the company level, as I said, that the Brad, myself, many others, I think we need to be aware of the implication, and because we ship those AI products, so we need to be responsible for that. But one simple company cannot really do that. So that's also why Microsoft, Google, and others create this thing called a partnership in AI. In fact, I was very happy to learn later on, HKUST is also one of those 150 organizations actually getting together, learn from each other. The third level, I would say, is really at the government and the society level. The government must get more into AI regulation. Almost every major company is asking, that's actually really amazing that, asking their government, local government, to get more into that, because they are scared. They really don't know what if someone is accusing me that I actually had something to do with this Trump AI, whatever. So that is the thing that the more regulation, in my opinion, will be needed. And the different countries, by the way, take a very different approach there. In the US, which I'm more familiar with, that typically the companies will run wild first. Then the government regulations will follow, eventually law will follow. And then in China, it's actually very different. In China, the government takes a much more proactive approach from get-go. Like the ChatGPT type of model cannot be released to the market until this governing body has something to say. Now, one can argue which approach is better, but I'm glad that the people all agree governments have a very important role to play. So I share my own learning at those 3 different levels. Yeah.
Thank you for those insights, Professor. Just one more question. Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Jessica. I'm currently a third-year undergraduate student at Harvard University studying computer science. A lot of topics you touched on today were very salient. So two quick questions. One is, I noticed there was an exponential graph that talked about the number of parameters that were used to train some of these models. Some people say that in the future, it's not so much the number of parameters that will be increasing, but instead having comprehensive, diverse data sets. So one, what's your reaction to this? Two, how do you think we can actually move forward in curating those data sets? And the second question is, with regards to chips, I noticed that in your presentation, there was a very heavy emphasis on NVIDIA. I'm Taiwanese, so chips are always very top of mind. How do you feel about NVIDIA versus like AMD, Foxconn, and how do you think that this will, I guess, play out in the future over the next 10 years?
Yeah. Well, the first question, I'm glad to learn that you are a computer science student, and the people do believe right now that what kind of data set we use to train GPT is extremely important. In my presentation, I mentioned about the coding data, but there are other kind of diversity there as well. Especially if you get into more domain-specific models, you absolutely need this kind of relevant data. But no one really knows how big the data set should be. Is there a diminishing return sometime soon? No one really knows that yet. The reason right now there are two things that limit the data set size. One is how much data can you really collect. There's only that much data on the internet that you can really clean, collect, and use. So that's why people now get into books and other things, and it takes time to get the data size itself. And the other thing is actually, it's surprising, is actually limited by the computing power. The reason actually you end up with that many tokens is that you can only run 25,000 GPUs parallel together at this point. That also limits how much so that's why some people suspect that the GPT-4 probably is the so-called mixture of expert model, probably 175 billion models, kind of running. But no one really knows because they no longer publish, So that's that's a little bit of technical detail there. The second question that I can answer you, and so I know Jensen for a long, long time, and I used to manage Microsoft NVIDIA collaboration, and so I used to go down, and I was always amazed at how chaotic his company was, and he was very proud, claiming that there's no need for mid-level manager, so there's no need for. I don't believe that, So when Jensen saw the rise of deep learning 10 years ago, and he dropped everything, just bet the company on that. And I greatly admire him. In my opinion, Jensen right now is the greatest CEO in the world, followed closely by Satya Nadella of Microsoft. So because we know that the importance of computing power, and we of course have a good relation with him, he used to always lecture me that, Harry, your company is in trouble. I said, why? We're doing fine. He said, oh, I know the numbers. The number of GPUs you order is only 12-point-some% of what Google is offering. It's ordering. So I said, come on. So then later, of course, we found out we're ordering more and more chips. And so in Redmond, we said, oh, this guy Jensen must be laughing all the way to the bank. So I mentioned that to Jensen. Jensen said, oh, come on, Harry. Even if it is, I must be going to a very small bank. But now, with NVIDIA now over $1 trillion valuation, and they're doing extremely well. I think it would be very hard for other companies, even AMD, which I great admiration for Lisa, and Lisa is doing an incredible job. And it just in all this kind of technology evolution, you got to realize it's the ecosystem, not one thing. The reason they got so far is because all the GPUs and they had this CUDA language that Ian designed. It's just for the shading stuff for graphics, and no one thought it was useful for deep learning. There was no deep learning. This all happened. The whole ecosystem built around that. And anyone competing with NVIDIA nowadays needs to get the software system somewhat compatible. And anything that, for instance, coming out of China, that needs to be compatible. Or there will be another technology shift that you no longer really need this kind of thing. For instance, people now are talking about, building, application more specific kind of silicon that just for the latest LLMs. Now you are kind of fitting large language model into this kind of CUDA language, but that may not be the right approach 5 years from now. It's still the best, but it may not be true. So there are a lot of smart people, I'm sure some in MIT, Harvard, other HKUST are thinking about those things, but it will take some time. I think in AI, in my opinion, the short-term NVIDIA it is, and the longer-term Microsoft probably will take most advantage because it's all about the productivity.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panel for an incredibly engaging discussion. I've surely learned a lot, and I hope it's the same for all of you. I'm so sorry, but I think unfortunately we're out of time. But perhaps afterwards we can have the speakers, chat a bit.
Sure. Thank you, Jefferson.